You are live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rip.Mix.Burn, the competition. And this is our conversation series called Let's Talk Drawings. Um, and we will be sort of talking about drawings and critiquing the city and a whole lot of other questions that we'll be taking up today. So we have with us Professor Pratyush Shankar, who is also the curator of this competition, Rip.Mix.Burn. We also have Snigdha, who is a conservation architect, and she's also part of the team. We also have Dhruv Raja, who's also a big part of how the competition and everything came about. Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to have you all together.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I will just introduce the competition for those who are new to City Labs and what we do. So City Labs is a research organization, and we write and we take workshops on cities and try to critique the cities by drawing and writing and a lot of other ways. This is the first competition that we have come up with called Rip.Mix.Burn the city. It is a critical thinking competition where we invite participants to come up with one image of their imagined city, of how they would like their future cities to be like, and with an attached manifesto or something that guides them through the process of drawing their imagined city. So we would now like to ask Pratyush if he could tell us a little bit about what Rip.Mix.Burn the city is and where did the idea sort of come about.
So thanks Vaibhavi for hosting this conversation series, and also really wanted to thank the team here, and also wanted to thank all the participants who might listen to this right now or later, because we've got overwhelming number of people who have already registered, and as I gather, many of them are already drawing up these cities. So yeah, so regarding your question, Vaibhavi, regarding how did this idea really come about, and why are we really doing this competition? So I get this, this question is asked quite often. I always believe that so as professionals, as citizens, and also as an institution, be it my university or be it City Labs, I think we want to be able to contribute more in city building. We want our cities to be more livable, better, more just, more socially equitable, if I may use that word. Uh, but then our lived in realities in cities are a whole different matter. What we do find is that we are usually uh, complaining about our cities. It's very common that this doesn't work, that doesn't work. Why is this project like this? Why is this road designed like this? Where are the parks? Where are the footpaths? What happened to master planning? We keep asking those questions, and I very seriously believe that if at all any change has to be brought about in any society, then it cannot happen just at one go. It cannot simply happen by a great idea. I think change comes in a society and also in a city when there's a whole ecosystem of ideas floating around. So, for example, if municipality is facing some problems as to how to deal with a park, or what to do with a park, how to redesign a park, uh, they will call somebody and get something done. That's what we have noticed. Uh, but if, for example, in a city there are enough exhibitions, enough talks, enough literature, enough writings on what can happen to our city, what can happen to this park, what is the value of green spaces, for example. So if you create a whole ecosystem of critiques, of ideas, of new imagination, then what I have noticed is the moments when city really needs something, there is already a kind of an ideas that is built up. So I think all civilized societies have to create an ecosystem of ideas that are coming from different quarters. Some will come from civil society, some will come from institutes, some will come from writers, some will come from artists, some will come from professional architects, urban designers who are maybe just doing competitions. So we need enough of those. And I seriously believe that we do not have enough of those. We do not have enough conversations on what kind of city we want to create. And often the discussion on cities, and that's why we believe it's very important to write histories of cities. The discussion on cities in India is very caricaturized. So at one end, you have this kind of a romance of the great Indian city, the great historic Indian city, as if it was, everything was perfect. It's almost like that Ram Rajya kind of a moment. And at the other extreme, people are simply complaining about, look at the Western cities and look at the Indian cities. So there is no kind of a middle ground of what our cities really are. So in some sense, if I were to answer this question that's a really long answer I gave, but if I were to really answer this question in a absolutely short and sweet fashion, what we are doing here is we are creating that middle ground of conversation about our cities. One of the ways to create conversation is to not describe what is there, but to imagine what it could be. So when we imagine, we end up critiquing the present. So in that sense, this is that gap that we wish to fill of a conversation on cities. And we hope that this competition will fill this gap. We see it as a beginning of an amazing conversation that we'll all have on, see, this guy did this, and that's what it means. So maybe that's my answer. But I don't know whether I really answer your question directly or.
Yeah. I think it was. I think it sort of sums up what we've been discussing all through, and also like you can also maybe put some light on the title, that is Rip.
Oh yeah, so that's an intriguing title. So myself, and Snigdha, and you also, and with Dhruv and Palak, I mean, we have been debating and discussing about the competition. So we were very sure we do not want an urban design or an urban planning kind of a competition. We want a competition that allows a kind of a creative leap of faith, some kind of, it frees us from the problems or the immediate data of the city. That was very important. And then I remember this ad, the Macintosh ad. I think it was 1998, if I'm not getting it wrong, or 2000. Dhruv, do you remember the year?
2001.
2001. And I remember this ad because when I saw this ad in 2001, and in those times CDs were a big thing, and the fact that you had the power to burn a CD, we would call it to burn a CD, means that in your personal computer you can pick up so many different songs from different sources and burn it into one CD was we thought it was something very empowering. And to be able to mix things up, to be able to rip apart things from their original context and mix things up to make our own playlist for let's say a travel that we are to do or for a party, was also a way in which we were able to express ourselves. So each one of us had our own little CDs. And I thought that's a very apt title. To rip means to be able to take things out of context. Sometimes that is needed. To be able to bring different things together, because that's what creative people do. Creative people are able to see things, the connection that others don't. And burn means a final expression. You express that as you just said, in the way of a drawing and a little manifesto. So in that sense, this Macintosh ad was a good reference for us. And that's why the title Rip, Mix and Burn.
Thank you so much. I think it sort of sums up what we've been discussing, and for anyone who's new to the competition.
Hi, Pratyush. My question to you is deriving from what you answered for Vaibhavi. So you were talking about these extreme forms of imaginations of cities, which are essentially dystopia and utopia, if I were to use simplified terms in terms of fiction. So which our themes actually cover. So although they might seem fictional, they are pretty much grounded in reality. So throughout history, like we've seen that fiction has sometimes allowed people to innovate or reimagine certain things, and these inventions have actually happened. Like for example, the Jules Verne's his series about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Travel to the Moon has actually inspired a lot of inventions. Also, fiction is often these days, if in pop culture media, has been used as a complete escape from reality. So I would ask you, like, where does your idea of fiction stand while we are re-envisioning or reimagining these cities?
I think that's a very valid and an important question. What is uh, how do we look at the question of fiction? And as you very rightly said, that sometimes you see a correlation between, hey, there was this thing that this guy wrote in 1930s or this person wrote in 1930s, and see what happened in 1960s. Exactly the same thing has happened. At other times, it is um, very difficult to see a correlation, and we tend to see it as an escape. We tend to see it as, well, it seems fiction here is, well, it's just an escape for people to escape from the hurldrums of daily living, especially cosmopolitan or metropolitan life or life in large cities. That's also how Bollywood has been explained. I think there are there are there are layers to it. That is, so one is that fiction, in some sense, even if being seen as an escape, there is a lot of uh, what I would say a speculative critique that any work of fiction has, even if it is an escape. So a lot of the sci-fi movies are an escape from for reality. But if we actually begin to scratch the surface, if we actually begin to find out what was actually not said, but what was meant. So there is this very implicit, obvious things that a movie like Wall-E or Blade Runner is saying. But 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 many other movies are doing these, or many other works are doing that. But then there's a larger message that we find in this work of fiction, right, which is not very obviously stated. If we begin to understand that, we begin to realize that how most works of fiction or fictions of the kind that we are referring to, that are imagining a kind of a new reality, are in some sense trying to raise a question about the way we live today. It is a commentary on the contemporary. I mean, all works of science fiction is either an anxiety towards loss of social life, or a kind of a speculation of change in world order, or a critique of the way power governs our society. So if we begin to decipher that, right, uh, maybe it is perceived as an escape sometimes, and sometimes it becomes a direct reference for an invention. Yeah, but what is underlying in both the cases that you mentioned, uh, what is underlying is a kind of a sometimes a pent up anxiety about, a very subtle anxiety about the world we live in. Even when a lot of these, even H.G. Wells or other authors are writing, they are not writing in vacuum. So if it became a reality after 30 years, they were already a kind of a thoughts that were going around. They were already changes that this person was observing in the society. Let's say post-industrial revolution or something. And he's saying, hey, if it goes in this direction, this is what can probably. So he writes a fictitious piece, and some of it comes true. So the work of fiction is always a critique of the present, and even in its more fictitious flourish, of fictitious imagination. It could be anywhere. It could be Mars. It could be Moon. It is informed by the realities of today, even though if it doesn't make a reference of it today. Now, if we begin to look at fiction, works of fiction like this, it's fun. And it unleashes the power of fiction to us, which otherwise sometimes is only seen as recreational or entertainment. So that's what I feel.
Thanks. It really, I think it'll also give certain hints to the other participants that there is no burden, or sometimes with fiction we tend to get extremely ambitious and we want to
Correct.
just take something from nothing.
Right.
But I think this is brilliant because it gives an insight into there are certain things that need to be grounded in reality and that you need to really pick on to
Correct.
actually
Yeah.
imagine a fictional reality.
It's not frivolous. It's loaded with the gritty reality of today. Even though in its imagination it might be a pristine world, that has no problem, right? Yep.
I would like to carry on the same point that we just raised about ground reality, and we even discussed while like working on the brief or while we do our workshops, that how critique is used time and again as a tool to bring about change in the conventional approaches in the way we think. May it be Handel Fabre in the critique of life, which completely changed the way cultural studies have been approached. Or even how Jane Jacobs used critique as a tool to bring about a new form of urbanization in New York. What I would like to know from you is, like, if you can expand a bit more on the idea of critique as a tool and the ways we can use critique to implement a change in our current cities.
So I think I feel that critical thinking, or for that matter, to be able to express a critique or to be critical of the world we inhabit or to question, I think is the first step to creativity. I don't think one can claim oneself to be or we can claim ourselves to be creative professionals or even artists if we do not develop an ability to first and foremost look at things in its objectivity and say, hey, this is not right. And I think that's something that is very, very important, and we keep saying that to our students all the time, that you have to learn to. Now, critique doesn't mean that you have to be negative. And I think that's what I would like to point about. A critique can be a very, very positivistic tool, because only when you begin to critique, you will develop a kind of an armature, or you will develop a framework that you wish to offer, because you have to first question a framework. And if there is no questioning, you cannot demolish it. So there has to be a level of disruption and demolition, if I may use the word, for any new creation to happen. It's like the dance of Shiva, the destroyer and the creator kind of an idea. But then the whole question, which I think is very important for us, is that, I think you did mention Jane Jacobs, right? You're talking about New York then. So
yes,
there has to be a method to criticism. It has to be systemic. It has to be methodful. It cannot simply be just fashionable to critique. It just cannot be one of the, flash in the pan kind of an idea. So you need to develop a methodology to critique. And that demands a lot of internal discipline. It's not easy, actually. It's very easy to say, oh, this doesn't work, or why is this? But a critique is not simply a comment which is saying what is wrong. I think the critique or the person who critiques also analyzes and makes us understand why you feel this is not right. And that's a culture we need to keep promoting, need to keep talking about. And Dhruv, I seriously feel that one of the reason why I feel that city and the state of the city is such is because we have not developed good methods of critique. And these good methods of critique should actually exist in a daily life, in daily living. So it would be about newspaper articles, it would be about writings, it could be about blogs. But we need to create an environment of healthy criticism in order to either put pressure or in order to create a possibility for new ideas. I mean, otherwise, there is sometimes, the authorities say, they keep saying something. When it comes to work, this is what we have to do. So there is almost like there doesn't exist an ecosystem of critical thinking, critiquing, presentation of new ideas. And I think it needs to be addressed. And to my mind, the competition that we're trying to do is trying the Rip.Mix.Burn theme. And the fact that you have to think about these themes carefully. The fact that you have to responsibly put in a visual would demand a method of thinking and query. It cannot be simply random. So I think the method part is what you develop. That's what all good, the examples that you were giving. They had a method, almost like a thesis, a research thesis. There's a method to it. What is a method to criticism? That's what needs to be asked. And that's what we are looking for in good works from the participants. Yeah.
And I really like to even again emphasize on the point that you actually made, that critique is not always something which is negative. It's something which can also lead to something which is a positive aspect of the city or the society. And how can we actually start making and give way to a new framework to look at things? This is very much important, and I also think which was also one big aim for us for the competition, and also how to express those critiques to public. So yeah, I think it sums up very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like as we also have been discussing while curating this competition, that critiquing or the role of criticism is not to split, but to rather form an assembly of things, to sort of take different parts and question them. And which sort of brings me to this question, continuing with how do we sort of form that criticism?
Yes.
With the by the means of drawings, because drawings have been I'm just sorry, I'll just finish this. So drawings have been a really powerful medium as architecture students, and we've seen what the drawings can do. So I would like to really ask Pratyush that what do you think? What is the role of drawing that has sort of given us? It can, the kind of power it holds, and it sort of takes us from imagining a completely new city, like how Archigram did, or like how Paolo Soleri did in their drawings. What does it do to make a good drawing, and what is a good drawing really?
Yeah, so that's a tough one, but yes, so I'll answer it in two parts. First is about the whole act of drawing, and why did we choose drawing, and why we feel that drawing is an extremely powerful medium. And the second thing is, what do we look for in a good drawing? So I think the first part, sometimes I believe that, and that's what artists have, things that if I were to describe to you, like in form of a report, that this is not right in the city, this is not right in terms of a big volume analytical report. it has its purpose and it has its audience. What drawing does is it allows us to reach a whole different kind of audience. That's one. So it has an immense reach, and drawings are able to express very complex things in a very approachable and a simple fashion. Uh, it will also allow you, or it will allow different people to perhaps interpret things slightly differently. That's the power of drawing. So one is that somebody will find some aspect of importance, someone else might find something else important. But it does have an amazing ability, and we have seen that in works of art, or in the way architects draw an imagined city. It can totally suck you in. It can take you in almost like a story. It's like a story. It can take you in. It can make you get lost there, and it can open up your imagination of things that you never thought. Uh, a good story also does that. So it's not only the drawing. A work of fiction can do that as well. Right now, we want to concentrate more on the drawing part of it. So that's the power of drawing. It is a very powerful tool to say complex things, to engage. Uh, and a drawing reveals different things at different times. Sometimes I see this in a drawing, but at another time when I see the drawing again, something else is revealed. So very multi-layered with multiple meanings. That's what drawings do. Well, we are open to a second question about what do we look for in a drawing. Well, one is, of course, we would like to be as open as possible, because it's not a matter of personal preference and personal style. That's why we also have a very varied panel. We have Seema Kanwalkar, who is a linguist, a semiotician, and a professor academic. We have Christoph Jaffrela, who is a political scientist, who comes from absolutely different. He looks at society in such a different fashion. We have Matthew Gandy, who is an architect, but he is looking at questions of nature and architecture, or nature and cities. Then we have Priyanka Sheth, who is a conservation architect, who is working on conservation project, but has done extensive work on water and cities and stuff like that. So we have people with, and then I am there. So we have people with many different perspective, and I'm sure each one will look for something else. Will look for or will be interested in different themes or different questions. But I think all of us do agree that for drawings that can make us all sit up and take notice, or drawing that can provoke, or drawing that makes us wonder, or drawings that can sometimes disrupt and disturb, are all welcomed. So any medium is fine as long as I can control the medium. That is all I would say about skills in a very simple fashion. So yeah, I think we're really open. But as I said, the provocative value of a drawing and its ability to tell a good story is what we would look for. Yeah.
Right. I think it sort of sums up, what all
Dhruv,
we've
can you
been-
put the spotlight on everyone so I think everyone can see? Otherwise, only
Yeah.
my face is being seen. And you feel like a radio show with just voices in the background. Yeah. You're saying something, Beverly.
Yeah. So I think it sort of, I think it'll give a very clear idea to anyone who's thinking of participating in the competition, and sort of give them a few more days to think about what the submission can look like.
Yeah. Do you want to make some key, what is the key dates about the competition? You want to just summarize, just so that?
Yeah, sure. So we have some announcements to make too. So, which is like in a good way. So I just quickly let everyone know what the deadlines are. So the deadline for submission was supposedly 15th of December, and uh, the announcement that we are going to make after this conversation is that we are going to we are, because of the requests that we are getting from participants, we would like to extend the deadline till the 30th of December, so that people get some time to rework or finish on whatever they've started. So we are going to put up a poster after this. So yeah, that is something we really wanted to let everyone know, that we'll be extending the deadline for the submission from 15th to 30th, and
Great.
we are going to announce the winners on 10th of January. So those are the two really important dates that people can keep in mind, and we're very happy with the response that we've gotten till now. We can actually take up questions from people
we
who are
can.
watching us.
They can write it on the chat box. But there
Yeah,
were
who were
some questions you had, I think they were, which had come earlier. So if you want, I can answer those right away.
yeah. So we can start with the questions that we already had, and then maybe we can take up more questions from our lives.
Proof, can you also send me the link to the YouTube right now on my WhatsApp? Yeah. Yes, Vaibhavi, please.
Tejas Bile had a question asking that can there be representation depicting the old and the new version of the city? So can they represent both the cities in
Absolutely. Absolutely, because that's what I think this whole idea of a collage or ripping it and putting it, reassembling it, it gives you a lot of power. It gives you a lot of agency in some sense. Sometimes when we put two things in different timelines and put it together, well, it leads to certain new combinations. It makes us think and wonder. Absolutely. So the answer is yes. I think that can be a valid approach by someone.
Right. Okay, we'll go for the next one, where Khushi is asking, does it have to give an exhaustive sense of the city, or just a slice of a life moment works? So when you're representing.
It's a good question. Both works. Both works. In fact, we're not doing an urban design or a urban planning competition. We are saying we're not looking for exhaustive all the time. Somebody can be exhaustive for sure. Some people like to be exhaustive. Some people like to draw with all the details and everything. Some people might just show a slice, as the word Khushi has used. So that also is very valid, because sometimes that slice is enough for us to understand what the city is all about. Really doesn't matter.
Right. Okay, we can move on to the next one, where Tony is asking what scale of the city can we work with. So these are interrelated questions, but some people can have
neighborhood scale, or you could just pick up a road or a whole half of the city or full city, the city with its regional setting. Well, a lot depends on what are you trying to say. Depends on what your message is. But we are not looking for a particular scale, frankly speaking. As long as you can tell the story in a very profound fashion, that's what matters, really.
I think Palak also had a question that can we expand themes of the competition, and how they're not limiting factors, but are actually these guides that are directing. So can they just expand on those and add?
Of course. See, one of the reasons why we gave those three conditions was so that it helps channelize our thinking. One can build on it, of course. There is no issue, and I'm sure people will build on it. So if I say environment or loss of community, I'm sure people want to take that thing, either rip it apart or take it forward and take it into a new direction. I think absolutely all right. No worries there. Themes are just a start point for us. So it is only used to get everyone thinking. That's all. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
We can ask other people if anyone has anything in particular that they are stuck at or they want to know more about. Then they can write in their questions.
I think there was this one, okay, that we have already asked. Palak had asked. Okay. So, yeah, or I mean, if you can, there could be other ways for them. How do they raise question right now? They through Instagram or the email. That's what has been happening.
Yeah, so till now people have been DMing us on Instagram or they would mail us their questions. So
what I might like to, I mean, this video or this recording will be available. So that is, if we can share it with all the many people who have registered, not all are present today, listening to this. And I'm sure that now as they begin to complete their drawing, they might have more questions, because typically that's what happens towards the end of the submission. People have more questions. So maybe we can tell them, you can suggest to them verbally what is the best way for them to ask their questions. Emails might be the best, or DM, whatever you want to say, so that we can promptly reply and they do not waste too much time in looking for those answers. So
yeah, actually anything works, any medium they are comfortable with. We are the most prompt via email and also Instagram. So anything really works, anything that works for them works for us. So yeah.
Sounds good. Anything else for the day?
I think we are good.
Okay. So thank you, and thanks everyone. Thanks Dhruv, Vaibhavi, and Snigdha for putting all this together. And I think this is a good thing you guys have done, because I think it was their idea to put it all together so that potential questions that participants have can be anticipated and answered. Also, it gives more insight into what was in our mind when we floated the competition. And now you have one more month to go. And I'm sure that there'll be many new participants also that might come in, apart from the ones that the large numbers that we already have had. So in some sense, if we can put this thing on the website or somewhere very easily accessible, it can be a good reference. And I wish everyone all the best. And we're looking for some very nice drawings, hoping to see some good work. And the discussion that gets generated out of those drawings, that's what I'm interested in. So it's not simply about announcing the winners. Well, that's the easy part. But I think we'll have a whole discussion series on these drawings. We'll invite people who have done these drawings, not just the winners, but many more. And it should be a beginning of a great conversation on cities. That's the whole idea. Yep.
There's one question that we've got on YouTube. I'll just post
Okay.
it up.
Yeah. What is that? You can just read it out, Dhruv. It's all right.
Yeah. So Anuja asks, seeing as to how we as a species are only now learning the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration. So can the themes overlap?
Oh, yes, it can. There is no issue. There is no issue. As I said, these themes are only just to get you started. If you want to mix the themes up also, we have no problem. You're on mute, Vaibhavi.
Yeah, we have one more late question. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, that was already taken. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Good, so we can call it a day. Vaibhavi, Snigdha, and Dhruv.
Yes.
Yep, thank you. And we look forward to some, as I said, some really interesting drawings. Thank you so much.